Oh, like a number? No, I'll write it.
Yeah. Wait, let me give it.
Does anyone have a paper?
Also, I did my hair the same way that day. Like tied up all day. Then yeah. Can I, Rajesh, can I just like post? Can I just like post? It's in your account. Can I just post it through your account? Yeah, yeah. It's not.
Okay.
Olivia, how do you post? How do you copy and paste? Because I tried with the Control C, but it's like not working. Here, this page. Why is it? Like.
Is it in?
Oh, okay, good.
You do not know how to. Yeah.
Technological challenge, Dungy.
Is it going now?
It's going, but like it's lagging, kind of.
So people will be able to see this conversation.
Yeah. I'm gonna post it on the VUSAC.
And Victoria College.
Yeah.
And the elections page.
Okay. I'll just go to all of them. Wait, should I? Rajesh? Should I post in the Q&A page, ask questions here, or did you already do that? Or should I post,
No, post it all.
ask questions here?
Yeah. Just a copy and paste.
How does it copy and paste?
What are you trying to do?
I already have a copy. This is just.
Command.
Oh.
We can catch up. All the time, summer job actually. I need work experience. Okay. Actually, yeah, I'm doing time for VUSAC. We have like 100 jobs right here. So I'll do the thing. Yeah, I'll use the phone cards.
Yeah, seatbelt off the way it is. I know.
No, it is. I don't have time for that.
Yeah, Jake, let us know if like anything. Yeah.
All right, could I get everyone to take their seats as soon as possible? And could I get the candidates who are running for either the board, BCC, or Senate on stage, please?
You are running. No, you are running. Great. Last time? Shocking too. Wait. What is wrong? All kinds of new elements. It's just that you said it before. Oh, so oh. Angela.
Whoa, what? Oh, okay, that's not good.
What day are you
Can we not leave it on this? Like, so awkward to like.
We're getting washed out by the lights.
Yeah, getting the lights a little dim. It's just washing people up.
I love that. It's like washing my skin out.
It really is. It's really my complexion.
How's that look?
David, where's your power?
That's it.
But you're really dark now.
No, that's not good.
That's not good at all.
No, can we get more light?
Yeah,
Yeah, can we just like light up the room?
Can we just light up the room?
what about me?
That looks good. Can everyone see us? Okay, let's get started. Thank you all for coming out to the Spring Elections 2014 Town Hall. My name is Rajesh. For those who don't know me, I am the CRO for the elections this semester. And I'm really glad we got a good turnout. It's a good turnout. Did you guys enjoy the food? Yeah, the food was pretty good. So this town hall should go for no longer than 2 hours. The way it's going to go, we have candidates coming up in terms of whatever they're running for. So we're going to start off with Senate. We're going to move on to VCC. And then from there, we're going to do the Board of Regents. And then we're going to move on to VUSAC positions. Does anyone have any questions about the format for tonight? Nope. If you have any concerns, let me know. If not, don't tell me anything. Yeah, what's up? Okay, so the candidate speeches for every position except for president will be a minute long, and then the responses for questions should be up to a minute long as well. I think we'll start off with that. If it gets too long, we'll see. Yeah.
Do you want us to hold our applause till everyone's spoken, or after each individual person?
Yeah. So after they each, yeah, good questions, all good questions. After each candidate for each section, we'll have applause. I'd rather we do that. Also, I'd like you all to try and keep your voices. I know you might be talking amongst yourself a bit while the speeches are going on, which is fine. But just keep in mind we're live streaming it this year, which is the first time we've ever done something like that. Just to allow more people to kind of tune in that weren't able to come. So if you guys could just keep your voices in the background a little more quiet than usual, that'd be awesome. Yeah, Gabriel.
Those questions, how do they have to be like?
I've gone that question a bit. For the town hall, I don't mind if you have a question that's directed at a specific candidate. I think that's pretty effective. Did you have a question?
No, I just kicked the table.
Oh, please don't kick the table when the laptop is on. Any other questions though? If you have any, you are free to go. Cool. So we're going to start off with the candidates for Senate. That is Angela Sun, Ellen Chen, Robert Fan, and Simran Kataria. Simran has let me know that she won't be here though for the town hall. So your questions can be directed to the other three candidates. So we're going to start off with Angela, who will be giving her candidate speech, and then we can move on from there.
Hi, my name is Angela Sun, and I'm running for...
Sorry, hold on. I need to time you. Stop. You need to stop. You can go when I say you go.
Sorry, I am really...
Okay. Go.
So I'm running for Senate, as you probably know. I was actually this rep for the Victoria University Senate this year, and I've attended, I think, almost every meeting. I've contributed, and you could read my contributions on the VUSAC minutes because I do give reports when I come from Senate meetings. So I think I've done a fairly good job this year, but I think there's still more I want to do and that I can do. Most of all, sort of connect with Vic students more. I think an idea I sort of tossed to Yelena was having a town hall. Unfortunately, that never didn't really come together this year, and that's something I definitely want to put more focus on next year. Also, I have a lot of experience at Vic. I was on VUSAC for 2 years, and I'm a levy head. I've been a club head. I've been on VCS exec. So I think I know a lot about Vic students. I've been both a commuter and a resident student, and I think I would be a really good representative.
Thank you. That's awesome. Well done.
What did I say about applause?
No, sorry, there's no nice way for me to cut you off. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Quiet.
Next candidate, please.
Are you timing me?
Yeah. Go.
Hi, my name's Robert Fan. As you know, I'm Robert Fan. Cool. So I'm running for Senate. It's a brand new position for me. I think I have been a Mao for a year. So I just want to explore another experience moving up to seek more opportunity and bring a new voice, I think, to the Senate. Because I'm the first time Senate, so I think I can do more and bring new voice. So that's about it. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't mind a buzz later. Go on a pause.
Oh,
I don't care. Next, please. There.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Ellen. So I have focused on really these governing councils throughout my undergraduate life. I've been here 3 years. I've been on the UFT Governing Council, the Victoria College Council, and next year I'm going to be on the Governing Council of my Commerce Student Society, where we oversee 4,000 students. So really what I bring to you is expertise. I know what I'm going into. I know the duties of governing, and I know how to represent students. And what I think really would be beneficial for the students is for all the governing council members to work much closely with VUSAC, where we think we have a channel to communicate to the students what's really going on at these governing councils. Right, thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. So now I'm going to open up the floor. The mic is yours if you want it. Does anyone have a question for our Senate candidates? Yes. Yeah, you can.
Hi, for those on YouTube who don't know who this is, it's Jade Uganin.
Thank you.
So my question is, with the understanding that VUSAC has recently opened a new elected position, which has to do with academics and outreach, as a prospective Senate member, how would you be able to use your position to connect with this new VUSAC member for a new initiative?
You want to go there? Oh, okay. Thank you so much for asking this question, Jade, because it's something actually that I've mentioned in previous VUSAC meetings this year, where I find that there is actually quite a lack of connection between alumni affairs at VIC and VIC students. We're constantly told about all these illustrious alumni that we have. However, we don't have actually that many networking events. And I think that the way we can do this is, first of all, the Senate, I believe, is in charge of sort of honorary degrees and also awards. And I think what would be a great idea is if we work with the Advancement Development Officer to maybe ask if we could have more of a, because we just bring in those speakers for like commencement, and only the people who are graduating get to sort of benefit from the honorary degrees we're giving out. So I think a really cool idea would be having maybe a dinner with students to talk to them about their careers and the way that they got to the position that they are, and other ideas along that line would be something I am so excited to look forward to look into if I am elected.
Thanks. Okay. Are you timing me?
Just consider I'm always timing.
Oh, thank you. So, who is graduating this year? Please raise up your hand. And do you want a job? I assume you all. And I think everyone here wants a job. And I am passionate about this because I actually run for that position, the new position. And I have also go to the VAC meeting, and I talked to the director of alumni office, and I approached her, Elson, about the idea to invite more alumni to coming back. And I'm passionate about to bring kind of opportunity to all the students on VIC, because at the end of the day, we are going to have a job. Otherwise, it's a waste for you.
Let's hear what Ellen has to say. Thank you.
Okay, so I have to say that I have known Robert for a while, and I really look forward to working with Robert on sort of defining what this role could be, because I'm very excited in that it's rare that we get a new position where we as council members really get to work with someone who's passionate, I know, but also sort of setting things into his role. And personally, I have found a lot of learning experiences being on these governing councils, and what I personally wish the new commissioner would do is allow us a forum to communicate to the students about what we personally have learned and to help the fellow students with their academic and professional advancement.
Point of clarification.
Yep.
Just for everybody's knowledge, even if somebody's running unopposed, it does not mean that they will automatically get in that position. You can still not be voted into that position, so please don't take that as an assumption that they would be.
Yeah. To those who did not hear Jade, anyone who's running unopposed, it doesn't mean immediately that you'd be getting whatever position you're running for. On each ballot, there will be a yes option as well as a no and a spoil option. So you can very well vote no if you did not feel comfortable with whatever candidate. Thanks, Jade. I think I'll take 2 more questions. If anyone has some for these Senate candidates.
Oh, sorry, Sarah has one.
Oh, yeah.
Robert, why did you choose to run for both Senate and your academic position on VUSAC?
The question was directed to Robert. Why did you choose to run for what?
Both his positions. And why
Both
do you think
positions.
that would be a benefit to be on both?
And how do you see it as a benefit to being on both?
Yeah, I think because this is a new position, and I think if I can be on both or all the representative, I think I can bring direct voice from my perspective, and also I can gain as much as support from every level of the council or the Senate, and I can get more information and more support from different categories and different people. I think most important thing is networking, right? Networking, because I'm in those councils, so I meet different people, and I can bring different perspective and gain this strength to the student and bring real opportunity to the big society, I guess. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Any other questions? Last chance for Senate candidate questions. No? Awesome. Okay, so we're going to move on to the VCC candidates. The VCC candidates for this year are Angela Sun, Ellen Chen, Robert Van, Sarah, Lee, I don't know your last name, for reason far, and Simran Kataria, who again is not here. So if you guys wanted to do a different candidate speech, that's up to you.
You know what? I have to admit, the reasons why I'm going for VCC is very similar to the reasons why I'm going for VUS. Because after this year of being on VCC, I've realized that they actually do some very important things, because they recently changed the system so that if you're on the executive council of VCC, you actually have the ability to sort of pass entire new majors and minor programs, and you also have the ability to pass the courses within those major and minor programs, which I think is very important for VIC students. For example, this year they passed some new majors and minors, one of whom included a creative writing course, and I just feel like that's amazing and should be more knowledgeable to VIC students. And I think, once again, that is my focus, just to get what I learned from the council onto VIC students. And also, I've been asked to clarify some things, so I think just improving the connection between VIC students and VCC is my thing. Sorry. Yes, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's Robert again. So I think because I run for the Academic and Professional Development Commissioner, and I think it's important to go to the VCC to get to the academic part, because I already participate in the alumni council. So Victoria Alumni Council, I had the opportunity to attend those meetings. I think it's good to define my new role and also go to the VCC to explore what's all the opportunities, and also bring my voice to the registrar or the academic part or the faculties, because my job needs to be defined, and I would like to define in this way. Thank you very much.
Okay, to add on that, I have been on the VCC before as well. And what I personally found was very important is that you want someone who's outspoken at these meetings. Because these meetings, a lot of them are professors, and including the principal university administrators. So a student is really needed there to bring in a voice, to bring to the discussion. So for example, something I was involved in was changing the bylaws of the VCC, and I volunteered to be on the committee. And I realized that it was a committee of all English professors, and they were imagining these things that students would care about. And I said to them, have you actually talked to the students that, you're imagining these things? And they're like, oh, no. So I found that you need someone who really, will speak to the students and will volunteer to be on these committees to make sure that professors are not imagining things that you care about. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Sarah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry.
That's what I was going to say.
Of course. Hi, I'm Sarah Lee Rosenbar. I'm really interested in this position because, well, we're all here for a good education, and this position really helps define that. And I think that we're all here mostly for having a good chance to learn and get a good job afterwards. And this is a very important position where you get to define what you're learning and how you're learning. So both academics and extracurriculars are really important, and I think that balance is very important to have. So this is one half of why I'm running for this position, and then the other half is my other position.
Awesome. Let's get a round of applause for all our VCC candidates. Does anyone have any questions for our VCC candidates this year? No? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What is the major goal, just one that each of you have for these?
So the question was, what is the major goal that you have if you are to be elected into this position? Let's start with Sarah.
Can I leave it to Angela first?
Yeah, sure.
I think, I know I keep talking about this, but something happened at the VUSAC meeting recently where somebody was like, so what happened to the semiotics program? And I was just completely like, what? Is the semiotics program ending? What's going on? And so I think there definitely needs to be a forum, I don't know, needs to be some town halls or something that's more has to do with social media that happens so that we can get the academic concerns of the students and actually bring them onto council, because a lot of the times, if for all the people who've actually been on council and for people who haven't, the people who set the agendas are the professors and the admin and the staff. And so I think it's one of my goals is to actually get an agenda item on a VCC and to have it be something that the students care about and hopefully bring that, you know, into the wider big community.
So for me, I think it's mainly for my another position, academic and professional development commissioner, because I'm so passionate about this position, and I think I know kind of I introduced to you all, I know the alumni perspective. I go to the alumni council. So I think it's also important to go to the faculty and meet the prof and tell them about what the student need rather than here mention imagination. Yes, you can imagine it, but how about the real idea from each student here in VEC? And I think that's important to get elected and bring the voice and tell them what we really want. Thank you very much.
Yeah, my number one priority is getting more recognition for the VCC members. Because I think whoever gets elected, we are passionate, we're dedicated people. But the problem is that we talk to people and people are like, what's VCC? And who are you? And people know who the VUSAC heads are, but I feel there's a big lack of acknowledgement and knowledge about the power that we have as VCC members. So I'm really looking forward to working with all the other members and working with VUSAC to get that publicity out there.
Thanks a lot. Sarah, do you have an answer?
Mine is very basic and general. I think that since education is such an important part of why we come here, it's basically to help better that education and help get what students want out of the education that we choose to come here for. So that's my goal with this.
We have time for one more question if anyone has one. No? Okay. I'll ask now that anyone who's not running for Board of Regents, you're free to step off the stage if you want. Thank you a lot. That's Jeff. Okay.
Do we want to like sit?
All right. So our candidates for Board of Regents are Angela Sun, Blair Townshend, David Katai, and Ellen Chen. You wanted to start off?
Again, okay. Okay, so I'm going to be frank. The reason why I ran for Board of Regents this year is because I think there's a lot more I can improve upon. I was on Board of Regents last year, and I think that there's a lot more I can improve upon in my interaction with the board. And also this year as VCC on the VUS, I became more vocal, and so I think I'm confident that I'm able to sort of bring these views, student views, to the Board of Regents properly. And second of all, this is something that I think I've talked to some people about. There were certain things that was passed or that was talked about at the VUSAC meetings about what's going on in the board that I do not agree with, and I do not think that that VIC students had enough say on. And so those are things that I would want to be looking into and possibly talking to more VUSAC students about it, and maybe in the question I can get into it, but I don't think I have enough time right now. So.
Hi everyone, my name is Blair Townsend. I'm a fourth year, and I actually don't have any experience on the board before. Most of my experience up to this point has been in extracurriculars such as the Drama Society and the Strand, but I have found this to be very fruitful. They've taught me about a lot of different interests that students have from a variety of different perspectives, and that experience is something I would really like to take onto a governing council. I'd be particularly interested in campus life, finance, and alumni affairs as subcommittees. I think those are things that I'd probably be the most useful at, and I would hope to bring as wide a variety of perspectives as possible to the board this year.
Hi guys, I'm David Katai, and this past year I've actually been lucky enough to already be serving as a board representative. And really the issue that keeps getting brought up every year when you have board candidates is you want to sort of open up the forum of discussion between the board and Victoria College students. And that consistently doesn't really happen. And I think, and in fact, sort of just looking at the board this past year, and I'm glad that I've been able to take this here and kind of use it as a way to assess it, is I found that the real problem is that there's no institutional memory among students. There's no student who goes into it knowing already what sort of where they're at. There's no student that goes into it, you know, with the kind of relationships that all these other members who serve for 4 or 5 year terms have. So really, my main goal is to implement, and it's something that we've already discussed with VUSAC, a single institutionalized 2-year term, so that you just have one person who can kind of, you know, be the foot in the door, so all the students will be able to walk into the board, know what they're talking about, know who they're engaging with, and be able to re-engage with their fellow students. On top of that, I also want to reinvigorate the board blog, which we've started doing this year, the board email account, maybe having board office hours, just, again, so that students can come up to us and say, hey, what are you doing? What do you do? And we can give them a frank answer. Yeah, that's why I'm running.
All right, so one thing that I really bring to this board is my background. I study finance and economics. So a lot of the important issues that come up in Board of Regents are property, investments, finance issues. So my background knowledge will really help me make the informed decisions and talk the talk that people will listen to and know what I'm talking about. And my past experience in the UFT Governing Council when I was on the budgeting committee perhaps bringing some of the institutional memory that David has mentioned. So I know how to talk the way that professors will listen to you and know how to get things across to the deans. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Anyone have any questions for Board of Regents candidates? Yes, Jade. Do you want a mic? Okay.
So, for most people, property committee is not necessarily the most popular, but I think it's very important. And I'm just kind of saying it slowly so you can start moving. The gold-ring sector is basically complete now, so the board's focus is going to shift. One of the buildings at VIC that's going to be reassessed or need to be reassessed in the next term, I expect is going to be dry because that space isn't being well used. And from seeing your experience as a student with Gold Ring consultation and how it had a lot of student input, if Northrop High was being reassessed for student needs in terms of classroom space and the event space. What is one suggestion that you would make if you were on the property talking about Northrop High? Not the guy in the building.
Whoever wants to tackle that one first, feel free.
Okay, so property is something that I'm very interested in, as I mentioned before. And the way that these projects would work at universities is that there would be a series of feasibility studies that would be done before any decisions are made. So I think one concrete thing that the students at the Board of Regents can do is make sure a student survey is an integral part of that feasibility study and write it into the overall decision-making process to make sure there's a certain percentage saying that, yes, the board will vote on this, and make sure that students' opinions are into account and not getting too dragged down into the architectural financial studies before the students are consulted.
Thank you, Jade. And first of all, I'd like to echo what Ellen said because I think that's a great way to do it. One thing, and I'm not 100% sure, because I know the Goldring as non-academic student space falls under the purview of the CLC of the board, the Campus Life Committee. I don't know necessarily if actually, because it's academic space, Northrop Frye is potentially even managed by the VCC. So it might not even be within our prerogative. But I know, again, yes, as much student input as possible. We also, again, you have a fiduciary responsibility as a board member to sort of look after the general interest of the university. Make sure that the university continue to use the space for academic space. I know as someone who's recently had to book a lot of academic space on campus, being able to do it at VIC would be great. I think, maybe there's a little bit too much preference for law students, but the deal's already been made, and what else can we do? But I would say, again, mostly to echo Ellen's thoughts, and yeah, that's about it.
I do definitely agree with both of those comments. So I think perhaps to say something a bit more specific that has come to me through my experience, I know that there are areas of Northrop Frye that aren't necessarily tapped properly. Speaking from the Drama Society, back in the day there used to be an entire space under 003 that was used for the safe building of props, of sets, etc. Now I know the Drama Society is in the basement of Mansley, there's been some discussion there, and just I hadn't had any realization because of institutional memory that had even been a student space before, and it makes me curious as to what other areas are untapped in that way, and if there would be a way to reinstitute those kind of spaces into student hands. I think that would be something that would be really interesting to bring up in a discussion when we're talking about Northrop Frye as a space and what's underneath that hasn't been accessed.
Sorry, on my days on the board, I believe we got a presentation from the property committee. So I believe that while VCC might have more control of the designation of space, the property committee has to oversee all the sort of capital costs towards the space, so renovations, things like that. So I'm sort of I definitely agree with you guys, but I'm also gonna echo a bit what Blair said, which is that there are certain resources in Northrop Frye which can be very beneficial to students in terms of student life. However, they haven't been kept up properly, so that's the first thing I'd look at. So for example, there's several pianos in Northrop Frye that clubs and perhaps individual students could book for use if they were actually kept up properly, if people came and actually tuned the pianos for once. Also, I'd look at big spaces like 003 and think about maybe how to promote those spaces and how to make sure those spaces are bookable for student groups which need large spaces, because I know large spaces are obviously always in need at VIC.
Thanks. Any other questions for our Board of Regents candidates? No. Oh.
This is for the YouTube.
All right, so this year, the Board of Regents VIC came into a substantial amount of money from the properties that we had on Bloor Street, and there probably next year will be a discussion about what to do with that money, where to invest it, what the priorities for VIC are moving into the future. And some of the things that come up usually are things like capital costs and the pension fund. Now I'm wondering, which is actually in a really bad state, totally not funny, but I'm wondering what priorities you would like to bring to the table for the investment of that money and what kinds of direction you would like to see VIC take with that extra I don't know if you would call it extra, but with the additional money that it now has.
So again, whoever wants to go.
Thank you, Yelena. And I think, yeah, I mean, the amount of money that we're coming into is seriously substantial. The Bloorlands, also a lot of the money that comes from them goes to scholarships already, and sustaining and expanding those scholarships. The fact that I can go to any other student from any other college and say, hey, if you get number 3.5 at Vic, you get $1,000 is like kind of, it's fun to brag. But it's also, it's excellent. We had a discussion on the elections forum about divestment from Vic's oil investments. I think there's a wider conversation about that going on in the university, and I think if we are going to consider that, this extra money now plays a major role, and I think it is something that we should bring to light, that students actually genuinely want to see this happen, or at least see a discussion about it. Beyond that, I think in many ways Vic prioritizes too much renting its property and making money off its property rather than allowing its property to go towards student life and student experience. And I think just kind of bringing that reminder that now, hey, you have about like $10 million extra dollars. Let's
awesome.
Let's maybe try and make things better for us.
Strike one.
Did I break confidentiality there? I don't think I did.
Too late.
So this big amount of money, usually I think the best way to spend it is to budget it out to the students, because ultimately the students are the shareholders of the university when you think about it, and it's technically our money. So us as a Board of Regents, I think it's our topmost duty to make sure that it is not the people who are imagining needs of students and imagining uses for this money. So what I would really like to do is gauge the student interest. And for example, if we see that 50% of students say that this should be going into doubling the scholarship money, and say 40% of the students think that this should go into maintaining longer hours for Burwash, then that should be put into the budget.
I definitely agree with that initial survey of what people would be interested in, especially with a sum of money this large. One thing I would suggest is ensuring that the spaces we have and the student resources we have are working successfully before we start going beyond them to try to get into new things. I know that the Bader is, as a space, used to be something that was totally given to students, and now students are paying a lot of money each time that they're renting that space, and that's no fault of those who are running the Bader at the moment. The fact is that it's an expensive space to run, so if that could perhaps be invested in so it was more afloat, so that students would be able to use that on a regular basis, I think that that would be something that would be amazing to tap in. I'm sure there are many similar situations on campus that could be looked into and tweaked and fixed up before we looked into new ventures, but I think it would definitely be worthwhile.
Wow, straight answer. Sorry, I'm chairperson student project this year, so I know a little bit about like allocating funds, and so I definitely encourage that. I think that the student voice is first and foremost what we're here to do and what we're here to gauge and what we're here to represent. So definitely would want to know from you guys what you want to do with it, but also definitely echo what you said about the Bader. Bader costs so much, unfortunately, because I have to pay some this year, and well, not me personally, but also I think furniture. That seems to be another thing that I'm hearing a lot from people that maybe comfier couches. I don't know. So I think definitely number one. I don't want to actually put something specific because I want to know what you guys think.
Any other questions? I'll take one more. Nope. All right, let's have a huge round of applause for our Board of Regents candidates. Thank you very much for your time. So now we're going to move on to the VUSAC commission positions. Could I get Olivia Iglesias, Claire Wilkins, Sarah, Susan, Connor, and Robert up on stage, please? we're going in reverse. Yeah. All right, so I'll give you guys a minute to settle down. Just the way that this order will go, we're going in reverse alphabetical order in terms of commission. So we'll start off with Scarlet and Gold, and that candidate is Olivia Iglesias, who is running unopposed. Yeah.
Hi guys, I'm Olivia Iglesias. I'm in first year and I want to run for Scarlet and Gold. I'm unopposed, I guess. I've had committee experience this year at VIC with Winterfest, and last year in my high school student council I was prom committee and graduate rep, so I've had a lot of experience dealing with planning social events and booking formal venues and handling a budget. So I think I do pretty well dealing with highball, grad, committee, and Winterfest at VIC, and I'd like to hopefully open up more events around like the VIC spaces we have now at Cat's Eye, etc. And hopefully get more advertising out for the smaller events. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Does anyone have any questions for Olivia as Scarlet and Gold? I think we have a mic going around. Do you have a mic? Yeah. Okay, so Jade, if you just want to speak really loudly.
Anyone else have a question?
Yeah, Gabriel has a question too. You can go.
Okay, my question is, what Scarlet and Gold events have you gone to this year to
Jade's
form?
So, what Scarlet and Gold events have you gone to this year that have informed your interest in running for the position? And if you have gone to those events, what do you think could be improved by those?
I've attended some pub nights, but those aren't really handled by Scarlet and Gold, and I was actually on Winterfest planning committee, so I attended most of those events, and I just really enjoyed planning and the planning process of social events around school, and I guess Winterfest committee. Oh, and I helped out with Gardner Gala, which was during Winterfest. I forgot. Yeah, that really influenced me in running, deciding to run for Scarlet and Gold.
Thanks, Jade, for your question. Do you want to pass that to Gabriel?
Already?
I don't know if Mike. No, Mike can't reach.
Yeah, I don't know if I need this, but okay. So you were a first year. You have never been to highball. A, are you going this year? And B, how will you use the experience, positive or negative, to sort of, create a wonderful highball for next year if you do so?
Yes, I am going to highball. Hopefully see you all there. I know this year they sold out in record time, so hopefully I'd like to retain that kind of excellent advertising and enthusiasm we got from VIC this year into next year, and I'll pick up whatever positive impacts that Sebastian made this year and bring them over to next year's council.
Kathleen has a question, and then Ellen.
Okay, so I'd like to ask 2 questions, if that's okay. Okay, great.
I'll allow it.
Okay, so my first question is, do you have any ideas in mind for events that you want to run next year as Scarlet and Gold Commissioner?
As well as, like, on top of the 3 that are mandated in the Constitution, probably...
Or any ideas for the ones that are already mandated, both?
Throwing around some ideas for highball, Grand Budapest Hotel maybe, it's cute. Hopefully using this space a lot more, and Winterfest used this space a lot, but I'd like to bring the students down here a lot more, because besides VOCA events, which are down here most of the time, I think commuter resident students should be open to seeing this space used a lot more.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And my second question, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked the most recently elected Scarlet and Gold candidates when they were running. So you confirmed that you've been to a lot of events this year. What do you think you would do better than the current Scarlet and Gold Commissioner?
I think this year's gone pretty well, but attendance is always kind of a problem. So maybe advertising different ways, getting more people to show up, more enthusiasm, than what's already present at VIC, but definitely more people should be coming out.
Cool, thank you.
If you wanted to pass the mic backwards.
Hi, so these Scarlet and Gold events, do you think commuters are underrepresented? And if so, are you going to leave it to the commuter commissioner to fix that problem?
I'm a commuter, and I don't think commuters are that underrepresented. I think sometimes res students are a little underrepresented at the events or like directly in VIC. I'd like to address both issues and hopefully get like adequate numbers from both res and commuter students at all the events. And I'll look for help from commuter commissioner as well, hopefully.
Cool. We have time for a couple more. Nope. All right. Let's get a round of applause for Olivia. Thank you for Scarlet and Gold. We're going to move on to, our education equity candidate, Claire Wilkins.
Hi guys, I'm Claire Wilkins. I'm running unopposed for Education and Equity. I've spent the last semester on the Education and Equity Committee as an executive, and I'm majoring in equity studies, so I have a little bit of experience with that. I'm really passionate about issues to do with equity and awareness of different issues. And I'm thinking of bringing back Aboriginal Week because I really like that one a lot. I'm thinking of maybe doing an event called Take Back the Night, where it's raises awareness about violence against women, and trying to get more involved with New College and other events that are going on in U of T that Vic College is sometimes disconnected from. So, yeah.
Thanks. Floor is open. Anyone have any questions for Claire? Yep. Kamal and then Ashley.
Sorry, why?
Wait, you need the mic. I see you. Oh, sorry, I didn't see you. Now I do.
Okay, so I just had a question, like, why specifically New College?
Oh, New College is really involved with, I guess I kind of just assumed, I'm subscribed to their like email list, and they are the college that has the equity studies major, so they run a lot of events that are based in equity and stuff like that, and I think it would help to get Vic students involved.
Ashley?
Well, I kind of have two questions. My first question is sort of like, what's your vision for next year? Because from what I'm aware of, the E&E Commission sort of has their own focus for the year. For example, it could be a social justice focus, a charity focus, whatever that may be.
I guess I was primarily just thinking about awareness, because I think there are a lot of issues around VIC that a lot of people don't really know about or talk about a lot. But social justice-wise, I know I'd bring back Mike for a Change, which was really good at raising money, I think, for issues like that. So, yeah.
And my second question is, how are you going to deal with getting awareness out for the E&E committee? Because E&E committee isn't trending as greatly as it could be, and that's sort of a problem. So how would you address that?
I don't know. That's a hard one for sure. Getting involvement is always a little difficult because people are pretty hesitant. But I guess I just do a lot of Facebook spamming, try and send out some emails. Usually Facebook spamming is pretty effective. Yeah.
Cool. Our next question is from Gabriel. And then do you want to pass to Jane?
So, I am of the opinion that education and equity can expand to a greater portfolio than it currently holds, in particular when dealing with like mental health issues and mental health awareness and stuff. Stuff that we see like covered in the varsity that CAPS like is sort of being undersubscribed to just generally. Do you have any plans for sort of big mental health initiatives or potentially bringing those onto the college?
I actually hadn't thought about that, but that's a really good issue to bring up because it definitely affects a lot of students, especially at U of T, because a lot of students are under stress and it's not really talked about. I guess I'd just try and make CAPS a more accessible resource to students by advertising more broadly and yeah, maybe run some charity events that have to do with mental health issues.
Anyone else for a question after Jade? Just get a speakers list here. So we're going to Jade, Christian. Did you have your hand up, Ellen? Yeah. So Jade, Christian, Ellen, Zach. Do you have a question? No. And then I think we're going to have to cap it there and move on. That's okay? That's good. Take a question.
Okay, so one thing that I find from year to year that when I was a union commissioner tried to address is the lack of awareness about accessibility at VIC, which is always a concern. So I have another question, so I just want to put that out there. But my question to you is that the E&E Executive Committee basically works just as one team where everybody has the roles that are determined once you all finally get together in the fall. The way the Sustainability Commission works is that people have specific positions related to events or policy, whatnot. And what they do to structure it more expansively is that they include clubs and levies that fall under a sustainable mandate to then kind of have a coordination of all sustainable related groups at VIC. This is something that I've wanted to see happen on E&E, and with that consideration, would you maybe think of doing that? And if so, are there any groups that you see at VIC that would be a benefit to bring in and collaborate with E&E?
Just in regards to accessibility, I know that only 1 in 5 buildings on VIC are completely accessible to students in wheelchairs and other forms of movement. So that's definitely an issue that I'd probably collaborate with, I think, the Board of Regents to maybe talk about new opportunities to improve buildings that way. In regards for the committee, I definitely feel this past semester that I've been on the committee a little confused as to what my role was completely because I wasn't clearly defined. But I probably assign specific people in the committee to events and more specific roles like that. So.
Does that answer your question? Cool. Next question will be from Ellen.
So, from what I know, a lot of the events that E&E does is sort of one-off events. So, for me, it's hard to see any change coming out of, say, a one-time event that happens just once a year. So, have you thought about any ongoing initiatives?
I know the Aboriginal Awareness Week is an ongoing initiative. I think it has been for a few years now. I think mainly the main thing is just to get a bit of awareness about certain issues that are on campus, but definitely from an active perspective, I think more events should be involved that are actually raise funds for charity organizations and things like that. So.
Zach.
Could you tell me what you think equity is?
Oh God. I think equity is trying to find what each individual needs as opposed to just applying a blanket statement to what everyone should have split up in equal portions. It's more about acknowledging each person and their unique perspective and their unique social situation and what they need for that. So, yeah.
All right, so let's have a round of applause for Claire. Cool. Just note, if you guys want to step off stage, I prefer you stay. So the next candidates will be here in front will be our commuter commissioner candidates. We have 2 running, Susan and Sarah. So let's start with this one. Yeah.
Wait, does this work? Okay. Should I start or?
Yeah, you're good to go.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. I'm here tonight, running with the honor to represent you all as the next commuter commissioner of Victoria University Student Administrative Council. So my name is Susan, and I believe I'm a suitable candidate for this position through my extensive past experiences being involved with the Victoria student organizations as well as student governance. Some of you might best remember me as a VIC orientation leader, vocal gender executive, VIC Winterfest committee member of last year, or simply as a member of the VIC ambassadors for the past 2 years. So also outside of VIC, I'm also the current president of the UFT Origami Club. My platform is as follows. First, I will maintain the current VOCA pancakes waffles every week, as well as the VOCA dinners for every month. Second, I will increase the visibility of VOCA. That is through a heavier social media presence online. And third, I will increase the accessibility of commuters, and that is I will do it first by extending and promoting the VIC overnight studying space to the commuters, students, as well as second, lobbying for the overnight commuter spaces at VIC. Thank you.
So much. Sarah.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Lee, and I'm running for this position because I love VIC. I'm here all the time, even though I'm a science student on the other side of campus, and I'm on the exec of 5 different VIC clubs and levies. As a commuter with issues and desires, I am just like other commuters, and I want to be able to bring up those issues with the VUSAC Council, and I want to be able to represent all of VIC commuters equally, because most of the people who are represented are the ones who are active at VIC, and that's, in my opinion, unfair. I think I'm great for this position because I'm organized, goal-oriented, motivated, and invested at VIC. I want to improve relations with commuters and residents, finally start the overnight space for commuters, and most importantly, represent all the commuters, as I said. If you want to see my platform, it's on the Q&A page, and it's about 7 pages long, so please feel free to read that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Floor is open. Let's get see a bunch of hands. Okay, so I'm gonna just go in a circle. So we'll start with Kamal. Can we get the mic to Kamal? And then sorry, your hands went down. Kamal, Christian, Ellen, then Gabriel, and then Zach. Anyone else that I missed? Ashley Anderson. Maybe. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so I have 2 questions for you. The first question is, what new VOCA initiatives will you bring to the table other than waffles and the monthly dinners? I guess once you answer that, I can ask my second question. Is that okay?
Well, generally, since I don't have too much time to detail every single plan I have, I would like to do a lot more collaboration. I think that's a great way to use the resources that we have at VIC so that they're more efficiently used. So collaborations with commuter dons, residents, presidents, and dons, the other councils at VUSAC, in VIC, such as like the clubs and levies, and I think that would be a really good idea to have. So those are my general plans, and the other ones are detailed more.
Hi. According to your question, so basically what I actually wanted to do is, instead of just having pancakes and waffles sometimes, actually providing legitimate lunch sometimes. I think that's actually one of the more viable options. Another option is basically trying something different, which is kind of like breakfast items, but doing it a bit later so that commuters can actually make it. So this year I actually been to an area the new college at one point, and they actually had breakfast items for croissants, and they had like hot chocolate and everything, and I was like, that's such a perfect idea, we could do that. So, I mean, that's one of the options that I wanted to do next year if I become elected. And another thing is obviously I want more movie nights, karaoke nights, and obviously more collaboration on campus with all the Victorian organizations.
Cool. Did you have a...
Yeah, so my second question is, what do you believe is the difference between your role as the VOCA co-chair and the commuter commissioner?
Whenever you want.
I think commuter commissioner is a more generalized position in that you have to represent commuters and you have the responsibility to do so, all their interests and issues that they have. It's a bit more general in that you have to sort of think about all commuters. With VOCA co-chair, it's a smaller group, I think. Although they're the same person and they're very similar, VOCA is very small in its community. I think for both of them it would need to be much more visible, even though they're very well presented right now. Both of their visibilities should be promoted.
So basically the difference, well, in my opinion, the difference between the commuter commissioner and the VOCA co-chair, the other co-chair that's not VUSAC voting member, is basically that as a commuter commissioner, you have to take on the other responsibility of actually advocating for Victorian commuter interests, as well as also handling health-focused responsibilities. While on the other hand, for the other VOCA co-chair, it's only handling the responsibility and the operation of the VOCA committee. I think that's my answer.
Thanks a lot. We're going to move on to Christian Julian. There's a question for you guys.
Okay. All right. So wow. So the first question I was going to ask has been answered. My backup question has been answered perfectly. So then my tertiary question for you guys then would be, what do you think is the single best way to actually get commuters to want to come to Vic? No vagueness, no ties.
Sorry, no vagueness, no ties?
So like, don't say, oh, I have two answers. Give me one specific reason, and give me like it specifically. No generalities.
Just answer it the way you want. Give me it in 5 words. Yeah, give him.
Although promotions have been very well done, in my opinion, it just doesn't reach the corners of the whole U of T campus in general, because a lot of people are on the other side of campus, like me, and they just decide not to come to the side of campus. So my idea would be to have a listserv of commuters. So hopefully that they will be interested in coming once they know like everything that's going on. So it would be either like weekly or bi-weekly to say like the events that are going on, and hopefully that will spark their interest and know promote the ongoings of what's going on at Vic.
I think one of the huge problems, one of the huge issues that allow the commuters to not come to Vic campus is because the majority of the Vic campus events are overnight, like really late night events, and that's a huge problem. And in order to actually solve that problem, I was actually proposing to actually implement the overnight commuter space for students. And I mean, that's a perfectly viable option because it's been done in Trinity College. I mean, they have an overnight commuters overstaying space. So, I mean, that's one of the really big platforms that I want to go for next year as advocating for community interests. And that's my one answer for you.
Thank you, Christian. Ellen?
So I think both of you have some really good ideas that you mentioned in the Facebook Q&A. And I think your hearts are in the right places, but how can we hold you responsible once you are elected?
Can you clarify that?
Sure. So you've promised to do a lot of great things. How can we make sure that you actually do these things once you get elected?
Well, I think visibility and awareness of the position and what we're doing would be a really important factor in that. So right now I know that the VOCA page isn't well updated. It hasn't been for a few years. So I would like to start a website or a blog so that we actively promote what we're doing and we can outreach that way. So I think that it's really important to know that accountability is very important to us because it's a team of people, not just one person. Although I would be responsible for the exec team, I think that having that teamwork would also be really helpful. And delegating different responsibilities would definitely be an efficient way of using resources.
So I mean, I guess one way of what I was actually proposing to do, which I didn't have enough time to actually say on my platform, is basically that in order to get these things done, what I actually wanted to do is not changing the executive team, but maintain the general executive roles, while on top of it, adding more special tasks, such as social media, secretary, art. And in order to do this, the reason I'm doing this is because if you look at it, if you do a more specialized task on each of the general execs, they'll be able to get out more kind of information out there. Because one of the reasons that we really couldn't get posters out there was because we didn't have an art director sort of position. But it's not really an art director position. It's more like general executive acting as an art director. So it could be anyone that wants to do art. And I believe that with this special kind of task is it's easier for execs to actually manage a specific position as well as getting the task done. And I believe, and that's my answer. Yeah.
Thanks for cutting yourself off. Hey, kidding. We had a question. We have 2 questions. Yeah. Here. Just go. There's lots of lovely talk about a commuter stayover space. How will you ease that in
to the Victoria College experience, or are you just going to abruptly try and get it as like a year-round thing?
So I'm aware that New College also has the commuter space for overnight stays. It's too hard to implement it right away because I know that past commuter commissioners have tried, and it's one of the more difficult things due to security and liability. But I think we could start with waivers and a liability waiver, and like taking in something that's important to that person, so that they, in case they do damage something, that they wouldn't be able to get that back until they paid for that. Sorry? Yes, collateral, that's the word. Right. And then probably just have it for the more important times where there are late night events like highball or exam time. So we could start off with that as a transition year, and hopefully that would continue for the next year.
Well, for me, I would actually start working on these kind of things in the summer, drafting out proposals and everything to actually plan it out. My current idea is actually, there's two different ideas. There's the more long-term and the short-term. I'll tell you about my short-term idea. So the short-term idea is basically what we did with the leaders, is basically just putting all of them, after a night of event, just putting all of them inside a common room of rest. I mean, the potential problem with that is if you go for a long-term, it's going to disrupt the residents' life, and people are going to complain. Because there'll be people sleeping in the common rooms, and people will be like, what are these people doing? We wanna like watch TV and do other things. So that's more of a short-term solution. For more of a long-term solution would actually be one of the guest houses at Burwash. I do know there are 4 guest houses, and I was thinking of actually not taking all of them, but just 2 of them, and then just renovate it and make it into a commuter's overnight space, just like what the Trinity College has done. And I believe that's a pretty viable solution because we can. Oh, okay. Okay.
She's done. Yeah. Next question from Zach.
Okay, sorry, I have a couple of things. First thing, have either of you been to a VUSAC meeting this year?
Yes.
Yes. As well as I have also been to the AGMs that I have hosted. I think you might have seen me actually. So. And also, it's not just this year. I also been to the AGM last year. I mean, I'm not a current VUSAC member, so I didn't go to every meeting. But I did go to the AGMs, and I also read some of the meetings. I read the constitutions, and I kept up to date with the strand and the varsity and etc.
Cool. Okay. My second question is more a matter of practicality, and really for all candidates and all the future ones to speak as well, which is that outreach and communications are like, they're horrible scapegoats. Like, we have actually prolific like social media outreach efforts. And I know that VOCA doesn't have its own page, but nonetheless, the VUSAC page is they constantly updated. We literally send an email to people's individual inbox every week with all the events that are going on. All of that being said, what is a thing you can do to get new commuters engaged? And secondly, while that's like an interesting talking point, is that really the best use of your time?
Well, I had an idea that I posted on the group before, where personal interaction would be really important. I'm on the other side of campus all the time because I'm science, so that's just what I do. I would want to talk to people personally because that sort of gives the interaction where you feel like you're obligated to have more of a connection. And I think that would interest people more, having that personal connection and having that smaller community feel. And I have a few other ideas for like events and things where it would be forming smaller communities, like a computer science study group or something, so that they're on the other side of campus and they don't necessarily have to come back to Vic, but they would have that community feel and they would feel comfortable to come back here when they want to. So those are just a few of the ideas that I have. And I don't think we can put all of our resources in that, but I think it's a very important part to be looking at.
So one way of using the social media to actually enhance community engagement is basically actually update and use the Facebook page, but not the Facebook page, Facebook group. Because what we tend to find with the Facebook page this year was that it was not as engaging because you can just easily miss that post on your homepage. However, with the Facebook group, it's much more interactive, as well as we can actually get an update of saying you got a post. As well as I was thinking of actually also continuing with the Twitter, and as well as having a listserv, which is more frequent. And in the end, I do believe that social media is very important, but on the other hand, we also need to have a more of a kind of a startup for these commuters. So what I would actually wanted to do right in the beginning during commuter orientation is tell all these commuters, because during commuter, it's going to be commuters there, and you're going to tell them what VOCA is exactly about, what it is, and what it does. And so to actually get that information out there right there and right then, start from the very beginning.
Thanks. Sorry, you have one more question?
Yeah. Yeah. This is not a question so much as that it's like not in the commuter commissioner's power to take over or renovate like the Burwash residence rooms. Like that's not in our control. So I think it's just like not fair to say that you're going to like renovate them and then just use them for that because those aren't owned by VUSAC.
We had Ashley, Yelena, and then I have a question as well. And then Christine, do you have your hands up? Okay, you go after Yelena.
How do you plan on addressing the barriers that commuters face in terms of making connections with U of T, or I guess VIC more specifically?
Well, as I mentioned in my previous answer, I was thinking of doing smaller communities and forming that early on in the year, so that like during Frosh Week, it would be really important for me to have something like Flix, but VIC version, where you meet people in your own program and you get to like make friends with them, so that you have a sort of big community, even if it's not at VIC specifically. I think that would be really important to have as like a home base. And then the second part of your question?
My question is just about addressing the barriers of what commuters face.
Well, also commuter space itself.
No, that commuter space, sorry. So addressing the barriers that commuters face in terms of connecting with the VIC environment or U of T as a whole.
Well, also in addition to my like listserv idea about having it just for commuters, we would also have like a highlight of different clubs and events that are happening at U of T. So I know that happens in the listserv itself, but not everything gets posted there, especially because it's on a volunteer basis. So it'd be nice to like highlight different things that we see ourselves and then post that up and make it available to others.
Well, I initially thought one of the issues that most of the commuters face at VIC is basically the distance that it takes to travel across the Queen's Parks. However, what I did realize later on is that some of the disengagement that happens with our commuters actually because there isn't enough motivation to actually cross that Queen's Park. So what we should actually do is get that motivation going. I already said about trying for commuter space at VIC and blah blah, but also another important thing that we can actually implement this year, well next year, is that we can do a lot more events with the residence council so that these commuters can actually make friends with the residence people to close up that gap between the commuters and the residence people so that these commuters will actually have the motivation to come back because they have a friend that lives in VIC, and therefore they can do VIC activities and etc. And that would be my answer.
Thank you. Yelena had a question.
Okay. I have two quick questions. So question number one, what are the two major issues that you see are very commuter specific that resident students don't have?
The first one is travel time. They have to prioritize their time much more efficiently because they have to travel like over half an hour usually to get here. The other problem is involvement, because they're not at VIC as much. They're not in proximity with VIC, so they don't get to have the involvement that resident students do have.
I mean, time is always a concern for commuters, especially when you have to actually figure out exactly where you have to go home and where you have to wake up, and etc. Because this is because actually TTC closes at 1:45, and you actually have to figure it out. And you have to get home before it closes, so you don't miss the last bus or whatever. So yes, time is a big restraint for the commuters. However, another thing that I believe that is important is also that residence people also make a lot of friends with these at the residences, but for commuters it's just really hard because there isn't really kind of like a day-to-day, face-to-face kind of a situation. So that's, I guess, trying to make friends and trying to make a community and have stronger Vic identity. I think it's more of a problem for a lot of the commuters at Vic, and that's my answer.
Okay, and one more? Okay. So both of you focused a lot on social events, which I think overlaps a lot with the Scarlet and Gold Commissioner. You also focused a lot on communication, which I think overlaps a lot with the communication, not commissioner anymore, I don't know what they would be called, I forgot. But that person, coordinator? Yes, communications coordinator. And the one thing that I didn't really see from either of you was talking about the advocacy aspect of the commuter commissioner. And one of the very, very important things that you should be doing as a commuter commissioner is looking at the fees that commuter students pay that resident students don't. One of those fees obviously being the commuter experience fee, which is paid by all commuter students and which is delegated to different events and services by the dean's office without any student input. So my question is that something that you think is important to tackle? And if so, how would you tackle that?
Gather your thoughts. It's a hard question. Whenever you're ready.
Obviously, the advocacy is one of the more important factors of this position because you're advocating for commuters. That's basically the point of this position. There are fees that are in the fees that commuters just pay and not residents, but you also look at the fact that they have to pay like 15 grand to stay here. Although it might not be fair to have those commuter fees, in addition to that is also like the traveling fees that they have to pay every month. So advocacy is, as I said, the most important part because you're looking at the interests of what they want, and being really involved with VUSAC and looking at the Constitution, studying it, and working with other organizations on higher positions would be the most critical thing to get those changes.
Yes, that's actually a really good point that you raised up, Yelena, about community experience fees. The thing with community experience fees, well, for me, what I would actually do is I would actually look into it because I haven't, obviously. I would obviously look into it, but I also realized the reason that the fee was implemented in the first place is to actually guarantee a much better experience at Vic. So I actually look through the breakdown of how it is, and I would actually try to evaluate. What I would actually do is I would try to get the input from many of the commuters, such as I would actually want to hold like a commuter town hall to actually discuss about it. I mean, that's one of the great things I actually wanted to do because, I mean, why can't we do town hall here? Because VOCA, Commuter Commission, basically is half the co-chair of VOCA, and therefore like, it perfectly hosts events like town hall, like this right now. We can provide food. And so therefore, I believe that town hall is a great place to discuss issues like this.
Cool. Christina?
Yeah, so the commuter commissioner has to deal with a lot of different groups, like commuter dons and res dons and stuff. So I wanted to ask you, what do you guys think is the ideal relationship with VOCA, the commuter dons, as well as the res dons? Like, how do you envision that relationship?
Well, obviously, residents and commuter relations need to be improved because there is that separation that a lot of people feel. I've had feedback about like this issue before, and so I think that with residents, dons, and resident president, it would be important to have more collaboration with them. With commuter dons and VOCA and other campus commuter relations, it would be important to have not just support, but collaboration, as I said before, because although they sound pretty similar, they are different. With commuter dons, they're separate from VUSAC, so I think that working together would be a much more productive way of doing things.
Cool. Oh, sorry.
So exactly like what we did this year, I would envision more of an interactive and more of a mutual kind of relationship between the commuter commissioner, the co-chair, and the commuter dons. We always help each other out. What the commissioner could not do, the commuter dons do. The commuter dons couldn't do, the commissioners and the co-chairs do. However, on the other hand, about the relationship with the residence dons, I do not believe that there needs to be such a kind of a huge kind of relationship between the commuter commissioner and the residence don. More of like a commuter commissioner with the residence council, not the dons. Because the dons are more in charge of sort of like a sorry. The dons are more in charge of more like a sort of kind of helpful mentoring sort of a position, while actually the residence council are more in charge of the events and actually what goes on with the residents. So I believe more direct interaction with the residence council would be more effective in actually promoting the two experiences together.
Cool. So just one more question. I have a quick question, and then Jay just has a quick comment that she's going to make. So my question is basically, I've been a student at VIG for 4 years now. I've commuted for all 4 years. And one of the greatest parts of being a commuter at VIG that I thought was the fact that we had this amazing commuter lounge in the old Birch Carnegie building. And I was pretty shocked after I came back from my exchange for the fall semester. The commuter lounge is nothing more than a couple of couches in the basement of Gold Ring. It's hardly conducive to kind of friendly atmosphere that we all used to love. Go in there and just hang out, whether it was to talk or do our work. What are your thoughts on the current state of the commuter lounge? Do you think that you have a role in improving its condition, and how would you go about doing that?
At first, when I saw the commuter lounge, I was appalled. It was like these wiggly couch things that didn't have backs. I was like, how is this a lounge? Where's the comfort in the feeling that we had in Birch Carnegie? I feel like right now it's improved. There's more hanging out down there, but a lot of people don't know that there's a second basement in this building, and that the feeling of home isn't really there anymore because it's split between that space and this space now. And your second part was how to improve that? Yeah. Well, that's difficult because it's not exactly in our power to change anything immediately and like by ourselves. We would have to talk with space management and other organizations that have power to do so and see what commuters want from their spaces and hopefully promote the downstairs space a bit more.
Thanks.
My opinion regarding that space is also the same, terrible. And I believe that, I mean, it has really improved, but I believe that it could really be a lot better. And what I would actually wanted to do is to maybe even work with a student project, because student project is another viable funding opportunity other than just a VUSAC. And I remember this year lots of great projects has been passed, especially in Cat's Eye, and I think also down the commuter lounge. And I would also, so therefore I would like to work with the student project chair and to actually get this, to actually try to make a proposal for funding for more kind of a more comfortable spaces and more items which will make commuters feel more comfortable, just like what we had in Birch Carnegie. And that's definitely one of the viable options that I would want to go for. As for if it will happen or not, I would try, but that's all I have to say.
Cool. Just a quick comment from Jay.
Yeah, so to promote our Facebook questions and conversations, I'm going to propose a statement, and it's hard to answer on the fly about it, so if you want to take it away, and feel free to talk about it on the Facebook page to get a little bit more in-depth conversation. Something I've seen over the years is that the Commuter Commissioner and VOCA are talked about interchangeably, thank you. But there's one thing that's very different about the two, beyond what's been said tonight. The Commuter Commissioner, by their name, represents commuters, with the understanding that they have to travel significant distance to be able to get to the school. The VIC Off-Campus Association could be a student who lives right on the border of campus, and they don't have that travel time. And for your position, you have to represent the entire spectrum of those students, essentially everyone who's not in residence. So I can tell you this statement again, but what I'd like you to do on the Facebook page is talk about how you can bridge that polarized representation between people who
be very close to campus and their needs versus the needs of people who travel maybe 2 hours?
Yeah, that's a great question. Just a note to anyone who wasn't able to ask a question to the candidates here, we do have a Facebook group going on. Just search in the bar, Victoria College Spring Elections. It's called Q&A, I believe. And the candidates are more than happy to ask any questions you have. So we're going to cap the questions for commuter candidates at that. I think they get a huge round of applause for that. We're going to move on to our candidate for Arts and Culture, Connor Tangy. Sorry, 1 second. There you go.
Okay, hi guys. My name is Connor Tangy, and I'm running unopposed for Arts and Culture Commissioner. I was served as a MAL this year, and primarily I'm running for, or chose to run for Arts and Culture Commissioner because I worked with the current Arts and Culture Commissioner, Leah, on every single Arts and Culture major project this year, or will eventually. That includes Gardner, and I was assistant stage manager for VBS. Basically, my involvement as a MAL, position intrigued me. Considering doing a completely different plan next year, but basically this year's VUSAC involvement changed my entire university plan. As have a lot of different ideas for next year, if elected, including forming kind of an arts and culture committee along the lines of sustainability and E&E to get more student involvement in the commission. And yeah, questions?
Well, any questions for Connor? Feel free to ask them. Yes.
So since you worked so closely with the current Arts and Culture Commissioner, whoever that brilliant person is, what changes would you make? What did you see that could have been improved? And what particular goal are you going to work towards for next year?
Addressing the particular goal, as I said before, I kind of want to start an Arts and Culture Committee. That's probably my primary goal for next year. As for improvements, I think that all of the events functioned amazingly. We had lots of student involvement, sold out almost every event for good capacities, I guess. And I guess something that I want to also do next year is to restart, or I guess focus more energy on the Ultra Now open mic style events. I think it's a great way to just kind of come by jam and like an open mic style event, as well as to get commuters and resident students involved. So I'd like to do some collaborations with the different commissioners, Scarlet and Gold, Commuter especially, and then also all the other ones.
Well, we had a question up here. There.
Hey, Connor. So in terms of events, what events or event would you consider, if any, dropping from the current slate of events that VUSAC would run? What would you consider adding, if there were any event that you would want to add to sort of the events that Vic throws?
Personally, I wouldn't consider dropping any of the arts and culture managed events. Yes, kind of there's a broad spectrum of things from like the pop to VBS to Gardner Gala, as well as trips to, I guess, culture like museums or theatrical productions, as well as the open mic style thing. So really, I think that those are all like amazing things that should be in place for big students. And again, just something that I'd like to focus on is kind of the more open mic, kind of drop in, drop out collaboration events, just to get more awareness about arts and culture, and also more involvement with the different clubs, such as like the Arts and Crafts Club and things like that, to kind of get more students out, not only, but also to kind of collaborate, get more involvement.
Cool. Somebody had a question. Is there anyone else? I saw a hand. Okay, so then we're going to go Yelena, Christina, then Ellen, and then I think we're going to cap it.
Hi, I was just wondering, you said something about having a commission for the arts and culture. What do you plan to achieve with this commission, and what is the use of having such a commission? Like, why do you think that there's a need for it?
I see the need for like a committee attached to the commission as a way to just get more student involvement, not only in VUSAC, but also in the specific commission. and that kind of broad range from like more of like the student publication kind of aspect, and kind of showcasing everything that VIC students have to offer, from like musical talent to I guess more of the cultural kind of side of things, some passions that VIC students have, as well as to kind of get more planning and I guess collaborations and support with the throwing of events themselves, as well as just another avenue to get like a wider range of students out to the events.
Yelena had a question.
So one of the things that one of the things that every commissioner, I think every commissioner's portfolio on VUSAC struggles with is the balance between tradition and kind of updating the position. And I strongly feel that there are a number of events, not just in the Arts and Culture Commission, but a number of events in general throughout VUSAC that have not been successful for a number of years and are still being produced in the exact same way. One of those events that I'm personally more and more concerned by is the Bob, and considering the fact that the last two directors weren't VIC students and the number of VIC participants constantly decreases, and yet VIC student funding with the Bader fees constantly increases, I'm just wondering how you'd want to kind of evaluate and at what threshold you would say, okay, well this event no longer works for VIC students, or this event, while it is a tradition, maybe is no longer relevant to VIC students.
All right, so touching on the Bob specifically, I think it's going into its 142nd, there you go, year. So obviously it's very institutionalized in VIC's culture, and it should be showcased for that fact. I think that some events such as like the Bob Cast Retreat need to be focused on more, and that kind of gives an added incentive in a sense to get more specifically VIC students, but students in general from all across U of T involved in the Bob itself. So I think that definitely there has to be a mixing of old and new, but like specifically the Bob, more focus on like VIC involvement, yes, but also we should welcome it open to like all of U of T students as well.
Your question, one of you. Yeah.
So how do you plan on bringing the Toronto, like in general, arts and culture to VIC? Because there's a lot of events that go on outside of our own campus that are really, I think that students would be really interested, and I think we could get them involved with them, that they could attend. Like international students, for instance, wouldn't know much about Toronto, so like how would we get them to go to stuff in Toronto?
Okay, sweet. Thanks for the question. I think that using VUSAC's means of like social media and whatnot as a way of kind of getting that information to the students directly, I think that's also an excellent way that the committee can be used, if it is created, as a way to kind of have them kind of compile a list of events like outside of VIC and outside of U of T's campus that are going on that can be constantly like spread to the students, and kind of that kind of style of promoting those events would be perfect for the committee. Yeah.
It was Ellen, and then that's it.
So my question partially answers that question in that I personally and a lot of my friends from VIC really enjoyed having discount tickets to a lot of the events that are going on. So I was wondering for you, do you have any ideas in achieving more of that kind of discount ticketing, and how do you expand that if you're planning to do that at all?
Definitely. So some of the trips that Arts and Culture did this year was like trips to the Gardner Museum to the pottery making, as well as Winterlicious discount tickets and kind of Stratford and those kind of theatrical productions. Definitely, I wish to continue those. I think that a lot of those events were very successful. Some of them not so much, so we can work on those to kind of hopefully sell out all of those tickets and kind of make VIC students able to go and visit those opportunities that otherwise they wouldn't be able to. So definitely continuing those ones and getting even more for VIC students. Yeah.
Cool. I think we're gonna cap it at that. Let's have a round of applause for Commuter. And our final candidate for a new position, the Academic and Professional Advancement Commission. We have one candidate, Robert Fan. Yeah, okay. He's just going to do his candidate speech. Okay. So, yeah, are you ready? that question. There. So my name is Robert. I hope I have to say congratulations you all. You have sit here almost an hour. I think more than an hour. If you want to stretch, you stretch because I'm a very chill person. You can approach me right now and you can come to here, shake my hands. It's okay. But okay, back to my real thing. You know, this is a new position. How do I define it? But I think there's only two words. It's one is jobs. Another one is the marks. Because my commission is defined as academic and professional development. Academic, obviously, is about marks. And professional development is the jobs. How can I define it? I have already talked to the dean's office, and I have already talked to the registrar, and I think I am going to achieve those two distinguished words, and I thank you all to listen to me. Thank you very much. Questions?
Thank you. Thanks. I think 5. One is on hand here. Ellen, Jade, Zach. Any other? We're hearing from a lot of the same people. Jess, Sienna. Okay. Sorry, where's the mic? Can we pass it? Robert.
Yes, sir.
You talk a lot about visiting the dean's office, the registrar, alumni affairs, etc. What progress was made during those discussions? And my second question is, I understand that this is a new position. As such, new events have to be created. Can you give me the name or description of one thing or one event that you plan to do in order to create this position, or a mainstay for this position, if you will?
Thank you. I actually have not only talked to Elson, who is the academic alumni office director, and I also talked to Howard Bating. He's the only VIC alumni governor from the governing council. We actually made a plan about the panel talk, inviting more alumni coming back to talk more about their experience, how they get a job, and how they kind of succeed in their career. But one of the barrier we have talked about is how to invite them. So Mr. Howard Bating, tell me is to look at the anniversary. So 10s, 20s, 25, and 30. If they are happening on VIC campus, can I invite them to come? So panel talk is definitely this event I want to push forward to invite them to come and share their experience. Sweet. Yep.
Yep. That was 2 questions. Oh, okay. Zach, I have a question, so we might as well, while we're in this area. Or the mic's there already. It doesn't matter. No, you go. You have the mic.
Okay, I have 2 questions. Number 1 is, my faculty, Commerce, we do a lot of really good career development events. And I was wondering, do you have any plans to see what other faculties are doing and do more than just inviting alumni?
Yeah, this is actually a great question because I only have a minute. That's why it's great. Because in Career Center, we have lots of kind of workshop and skill improvement workshop over the campus over there. Actually, I want to push forward and invite them come to here to do kind of workshop here, or promoting them, promote their events through the communication coordinator to use the email, actually send out, we do have a kind of event this week or the following week to inform the student and come to here because we want a job in the future. Thank you.
Get a second one?
Second question. Part of your job is about professional advancement, and I find a lot of people would benefit from quote-unquote professional skills, for example, Photoshop, Excel, that sort of training. So, do you have any ideas for that?
I think that's also brought up to my table or my plan. I think if I get elected, I'll come to you and talk about more plan and invite more students to come and improve their skills. Thank you very much.
We'll do Jade, Sienna, and then back to Zach.
Cool.
So Connor took time to talk about his experience since he has been on VUSAC as MAL this year. You too have been on VUSAC as MAL this year, and I would ask you to talk about what responsibilities you have had on council specific to your role as a MAL, and how you felt you did at achieving those responsibilities.
I was work closely with Zach to the constitutional research committee, and I also work close to Irina about this student summit thing. I think for me, I think I look at this as a learning process to explore my experience on VUSAC. Before I was getting elected, I don't know what the function is, but now I learned that VUSAC actually function as an outreach and talk to more people, be approachable, and I think I achieved to meet more new students, and I think that's what I achieved. Thank you very much.
You talked about marks as being one of your things. Could you maybe, like, what do you mean by that? Well, first of all, I guess, why would you, not why would you, but how do you use the word marks? Like, do you relate that as in a development way, or like that we're coming here to get marks and that's education, the only thing about education is the marks? Could you speak to that a little bit maybe? And then mostly I'm wondering what you mean by what kind of programming would have to do with marks. Are you going to like lobby to make it easier? Like what is your plan?
Thank you. Marks, I think, is to improve our marks, but behind that idea is to ask some students to come back to do panel talk about share their successful story, how to success in particular courses. For instance, we all know kind of an Econ 100 is kind of a struggle, but why not we can invite some successful student who get the word scholarship to come back to talk about it and share the skills, I think, from their perspective, and to improve the students' marks from that way. Thank you.
So you are running unopposed in this election, so the overwhelming likelihood is that you are going to get this position. You're also running in the UTSU election to sit on the board of directors on behalf of Victoria College. In the case that you win both positions, and constitutionally, according to our constitution and the UTSU constitution, you can do that. However, within our constitution, policy regarding the UTSU from VUSAC's perspective is set by the president and executed by the president and the vice president external. That being said, how would you reconcile your roles, and how do you foresee your relationship with the VUSAC president if you do win a seat on the board of directors?
Thank you very much, Zach. And I also want to mention one thing. At the beginning of this school year, I was the UTSU Senator Fresh Week leader, and I also get elected. Zach told me one thing when I get elected. He told me, Robert, you remember, you are a VUSAC student. You are a student from Vic. And I also understand. I read on my poster, VUSAC fan, Vic fan. And whenever I get elected, I will remember from my heart, I am the representative from Vic. I worked for Vic, not for any organization outside it. I'm the voice from Vic, not UTSU. So that's what I answer, and I know Zach understands. I really want to work for Vic, and I love Vic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry, that didn't answer my question. No, okay. More concretely, what are you going to do if a matter comes up at the UTSU and you disagree with the VUSAC president?
I think I will never disagree with the VUSAC president because I'm a Vic student. I think I answered that question. I will stand on the Vic point of view rather than UTS point of view, even though if there's a conflict interest goes, I always stand on Vic. And I will resign. I sit here in front of the audience. I will resign if there's a conflict.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Robert. So I think we're going to cap questions there for Robert. Let's have a huge round of applause for all of our candidates here. And then open up the floor. Is there a question? I'll take 2 questions directed to all of them. Just 2. We don't have much time. No? There's so many questions. So 1 and 2. Yeah. Back there. Any other questions that you have can be posted again to our Facebook group.
So would they all answer this question? So.
Yeah.
All right. Very simple. What is the biggest problem you think that Vic faces? What's the biggest problem at Vic?
So I'm going to limit these answers to 30 seconds. 45.
So for me, I think the how to advocate or promote our events is VUSAC or me. I think how to promote my role is the biggest problem. How to promotion more kind of program. I think is that. Thank you.
I think the biggest issue at Victoria College is definitely commuter engagement, because the commuter is such an underrepresented group at Victoria College, especially in events, opportunities, etc. And I will really work to try to increase that engagement up by to better than this year, hopefully. And I believe that that's probably going to be my main standpoint, just improving commuter engagements.
I have almost exactly the same thing as Susan. I think that big involvement from commuters isn't well represented, and it's a problem because that's the majority of Victorian students. Like most of us are commuters and not resident students. So I think that that's something that needs to be addressed and very important.
I think that probably the major issue at Vic right now, or to Vic students, is involvement. It's kind of between either it's commuters or residents, like that doesn't really matter to me. It's kind of the fact that you have like a 3,000 plus student college with a very small portion of that who are directly involved in not only government but also in the clubs, obviously as a bigger project. But definitely advocating VUSAC's role and kind of especially the governing councils in a way to get Vic students to understand what that is and get them involved, not only in that but also in general.
I think I'd agree with Connor and say that involvement is a really big issue, particularly with first years who are really nervous to be starting university and I think are just finding their place. So I don't know how exactly to solve that, probably more advertisements and I guess like Facebook involvement, but yeah, that's what I think.
I also agree with both Connor and Claire, but I think that forming a relationship between all tiers of Vic College, like commuters, residents, VUSAC, the external councils, would need to be worked on so we can have some kind of coherent voice from Victoria College.
Thanks. So yeah.
So
where's the mic?
It's okay.
Please hear for the live stream. So we can hear you.
All right, so my question was, you guys are running independently, but eventually you will be a team, and with team comes teamwork, and it is not necessarily the case that you work very harmoniously with the other person. Most likely you will run into difficulties. If, let's say, you have a teammate who is not working how you want them to work, what do you think that you will do to resolve the situation?
Personally, address it immediately. We have to work out problems between us. We're going to be working together all year. If problems arise, like they do between anybody, we just have to work it out and get to some kind of agreement that will make concessions to reach our goal.
Is there a specific thing that you might do?
I guess just talk to them. You have to talk it out, come to some kind of agreement.
Yeah, I definitely think commissions need to keep open communication with each other, but when conflict arises between different commissioners, it's probably going to be pretty tense, pretty awkward, and if it gets to a point where we really can't reach a decision, we'd probably go to president or bring it to the whole VUSAC team as a whole. So.
I'd say that being on VUSAC this year has definitely opened my eyes to kind of this, and like we've dealt with it. Like obviously there's disagreements between council members at every meeting or on points of contention, but definitely like discussing the issue, and then like obviously at the end of the day, like we're all still a team. We're all still like a united council. So definitely just working together on our projects, addressing the issue, deciding what the main issue is and kind of trying to move on it, and even just getting other involvement from other members of the council as well.
So for me, I would just make a phone call and call that person to talk. And obviously, we as a VUSAC member, we work together. Of course, there's a mutual goal we have. So I think when we speak about the issue, we need to narrow down about what we mutually stand for, and the way it can expand or to understand why this person have this and why the argument is, or is there that negotiation, or we can figure out at the end. So that's my question, my answer. Thank you.
I mean, disagreement within VUSAC is bound to occur because different commissioners have different perspectives and different opinions, and that needs to be respected. However, on the other hand, in order to actually understand the point of view of the other commissioner and where they're coming from, if there's a conflict that arises, I will actually talk to them one-on-one exactly where the issue is and where they're coming from and why they're saying no or yes to a certain specific issue which I disagree with or agree with. In the end, if the issue does not get resolved by a one-on-one conversation, it has to be decided by the VUSAC committee in general, especially with Judiciary and etc. But that's basically my standpoint in working in VUSAC.
We all sound like a broken record saying the exact same thing, but I'm just going to repeat it one more time. I think that personal one-on-one talking is just the most effective way, because that gives that one-on-one experience where you're trying to figure out exactly what they're thinking and what your different perspectives are, and somehow you can hopefully come to a resolution. If not, then it goes to hopefully the rest of the team trying to help out with resolving this conflict. And also, that would be for either the VUSAC in general, or it could be like the exec team that Commuter Commissioner has itself, because I don't want to be a Democratic leader.
Cool.
Opposite. Coming off at the wrong time. Dictatorship. Okay, don't be a dictatorship.
Thanks a lot. Let's have a round of applause for all our commission candidates. Let's get up our Judiciary candidates, the last portion of the town hall. So that is NG for VPO, and our three presidential candidates, Rowan, Nantha, and Alice. I will be taking the stage now.
Okay.
Cool. All right, so one of these is not like the other. MG is the only one not running for president, so we're just going to hear her candidate statement for vice president operations, which is that'd be good. Which is a new position that combines, I think, vice president internal commission with that CLAPS commission. So yeah.
Okay, so my name's Angie. This year on VUSAC, I've been the secretary. I was the Winterfest co-chair. I was on the student projects advisory board and proxied a bunch of student projects meetings. And I'm going to, as of now, be orientation exec, which I think will play very nicely into plans I have for orientation to do with VUSAC, because the club's commissioner, one of the roles is to run the club's brunch during orientation week, and I also have additional plans just to get VUSAC's name out there during orientation week. I think I've sampled a lot of different fields in VUSAC, so I know the internal goings-on of VUSAC, and I think that's what makes me good for VPO.
Cool. Any questions for NG at her candidacy for VPO? Kamal, Gabriel, anyone new? Any new people? Any question? Nope. Okay. Well, if you think of one, let me know. We'll start off with Paul.
Okay, so given that if you get elected for the position, you'll be you'll be on the orientation committee as an executive member. The role of who plans like clubs fair and the VUSAC related events usually falls under the president, and it's under discretion of, as you may know, the president also sits on the orientation committee, and they usually plan the events. And they kind of they would be the ones like allocating or.
Can I just clarify? In the clubs like section of the Constitution, it said that the clubs commissioner is supposed to plan the orientation brunch for clubs.
Yeah, it's usually like a collaboration with the president and the clubs commissioner. So like, given that your position now involves having the clubs commissioner, or being the clubs commissioner, I guess, how do you plan to collaborate with the president over the summer to kind of make it like different from last year's clubs events or VUSAC ran events?
The orientation brunch in particular, I don't think necessarily needs much differentiation from the previous years, aside from having a bigger VUSAC presence. In terms of orientation as a whole and VUSAC involvement in that, I think there's like a huge lack of VUSAC involvement, like huge lack, and like green shirts need to be everywhere. And so there's like, I have some events in mind to initiate into orientation week to do with kind of informing leaders and Frosh about VUSAC. But I don't think this has like a lot to do with my BPO. So like just to kind of like, this is just like a personal kind of plan initiative that I want to put out there. But.
Okay, but I mean, like, how would you work with the VUSAC president, given that both of you will be on the orientation executive?
I don't see that being a problem because I tend to work well with people, like in general in partnerships. With Winterfest, I was a co-chair, and I had a co-chair with me as well, and it was like I don't necessarily have problems working with other people on the same project, just personally.
Thanks, Gabriel, and then Zach. Thank you.
Do you plan on getting clubs more involved in VUSAC meetings in general, or VUSAC things, levy updates with the VP in any capacity at all?
Yeah, definitely the levy updates were a great addition to VUSAC, and I plan to have club updates. Okay, I plan to have club updates mandatory as well. This might not necessarily be like every update given at the meeting read out, just because that's very time consuming, and I think that there's way too many clubs for that to be feasible. I think the updates need to be something that are sent out along with minutes or in some other capacity, just so people are aware of them. But clubs definitely should be giving updates, which I don't see why that's not something that happens already. I don't know if you want a collaboration.
Zach?
Okay. The VUSAC constitution is kind of a hot mess. And so I'm wondering what specific reforms you want to make to the constitution in terms of its structure, if there are things that are included right now that shouldn't be, if we need to migrate certain content to other documents. And I'm just looking for a general discussion on things like that.
So the Constitution Review Committee was something that actually started this year. Unfortunately, it didn't actually go through past one meeting. And that's something that is not going to happen again, because I'm going to enforce that this happens, that there is a constitutional review that goes down. I'm doing the minutes is, I think, very kind of puts me in the field of being able to analyze the Constitution, and I'm good with reading large chunks of material, so that's definitely something I will be doing. And in terms of changing the Constitution, I think this takes a lot more discussion with VUSAC in general, and this doesn't necessarily have to be the Judiciary, it can be the entire group as a whole. But my first step would be to just have this Constitutional Review Committee started again and ongoing.
We have to move on. Sorry, Jade, yeah.
No, I'm kidding. I'm very sorry. Because the club's commissioner has essentially been amalgamated into the vice president internals scope to be now vice president operations, one thing that has to be done is that there is a club's website, and what has been asked in recent events is for the club's website to have its information put onto the main VUSAC website, vusac.ca. What that means now is that the VPO will have to work a lot more with the the communications coordinator to really make that connection for clubs to not only use Facebook as a point of advertising, but using that main website. And I'm wondering how you would make that part of your policy development to get clubs heads to use the VUSAC website as a resource.
Okay, so I kind of mentioned this in some of the Facebook thing. I don't have the details planned out, but I do plan on bringing forth a demerit or point system for the clubs, and I think this kind of engagement with Facebook or with other social media such as the VUSAC website would be a point part of this point system. I think clubs need kind of not necessarily incentive, but they need more discipline in terms of just getting their documents put out, being more accessible to students, and being definitely more advertising of their services to students, because I don't think every club is equally accessible in that way. So
you would get them to use the VUSAC website by giving them a point?
Well, that's what I meant. The point system I have not thought out yet, but there's my point of this is just to kind of give clubs a reason to need to engage in that way. Because if we just say oh, you have to be doing this, why do they have to be doing this? And that's my point, is they could be removed from being a big club and no longer receive big funding. That could be something that occurs.
Okay, cool. One more question from Yelena, and then is that a question? Okay, I'll take yours too, since you're not on VUSAC.
I'll take that question first.
Okay, cool.
No, I will after I just provide.
Hey, Angie.
I know.
So being someone who is involved with the levy, I find that there's kind of this disconnect between clubs and levies and VUSAC. I find that the only interaction I have as a head of a levy is to A, give updates, which a lot of times we may not have or we're not quite sure what VUSAC is looking for, and B, submitting our budget. And I feel that it is this disconnect. So I'm wondering what you feel that you can do to help mediate that, or if you think it's okay how it currently is, and what this signifies, and just your thoughts about that.
Sure. So first of all, I just want to clarify, levies are not part of my control.
Sorry.
It's just clubs. But one thing that I would definitely, so this year there was only one, as I've heard, one group meeting of all the club heads with the club's commissioner, and there's supposed to be two. I plan on having much more than two. I think this is important because the clubs need to be in constant contact with the club's commissioner, and honestly, communication between clubs and club commissioners is a huge problem, and this is something that is not going to occur because I'm generally really good at getting back to people and following up on issues that people have, especially through email and things like that. So definitely just personally making sure that I have much more direct communication with the club heads.
Cool. A final quick question from Yelena.
Can I ask two?
No.
Okay. So since you're on budget steering as the VPO, what are the 3 major issues with the VUSAC budget, and how would you fix them?
I have not thought about budgets, so my major issue is, so something that came up this year in my personal experience with the budget was that for Winterfest we were given an extremely small amount of money, and for Highball there was an exceptionally huge amount of money. And I have a problem with this just because Highball caters to a very small number of students because there is the capacity. Winterfest caters to a larger group because there is no real capacity to Winterfest. So I didn't understand that discrepancy, and I understand that Highball is much more of a grandiose event, but at the same time, I just wonder if there should be more consideration with dealing with the budget for how big of a reach the events that are getting funded are actually going to have. That's my experience with the budget.
Let's have a round of applause for NG. Thanks a lot. All right, so we're getting to our presidential candidates. We have three, Nifa, Alice, and Rowan. So you guys have 2 minutes for your candidate statements whenever you're ready, and then we'll do a question period. Yeah. Sebastian has decided not to run this year.
Can I start? Yep. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name's Alice. I'm in first year, but I have been extremely involved in a lot of campus initiatives. I run 2 clubs this year, and it's been great. So I hope that next year will be just the same, if not better. So I have 3 main pillars as part of my platform that I want to address. First is student voice. So student voice, right? I feel like there's a disconnect between students and VUSAC executives. I really wish that there was more communication between us and more transparency of administrative decisions. So I'm thinking about putting message boards, VUSAC message boards across campus. I would also like to have informal open discussions between where students can just drop by and give their opinions. The second is equality. I think it's definitely important to consider the burden of fees on residents and commuters. So definitely keep up the strong scholarships we have. And finally, health. I would like to address mental health. It is a major issue on campus. So I was thinking about having continuing puppy rooms, for example, because they reduce stress. Yes, puppies. And and many other health initiatives. So I want to act as the mid-person, the go-to gal, right? The person who is like your friend. And I think that's important because president should not be this dictator who just sits on the throne and stuff. So my vision is definitely an inclusive community for everyone, and I do hope that you vote for me. Thank you very much.
Hi, how's it going? My name is Nandap, and I'm first year. And to be honest, off the bat, when you hear that, you think, oh, he's inexperienced and he's an inadequate candidate, but that's far from the case because I spent the past 4 years consecutively heading student government bodies, and I raised over $18,000 in charitable funds, and I budgeted over $30,000 in terms of different allocations for the student body government. And over my term, the most important thing that I learned is that student body government is for the students and by the students. There's a lot of prerequisites to how efficiently it runs, like the constitution and the different institutions and the roles that they play, but that's superstructure. It's superfluous, and it's before the crux of what we're here for. We're working for the students, and we are students, and we're achieving their goals. And sometimes we get so engrossed and engaged in these discussions of power struggles and what the president does and the VPO does and the different purposes for the Constitution that we lose track of what it's there for. It's there for student needs. And it gets lost in the conversation, and we need to bring that back. We need to talk about meal plans, how flexible they are. We need to talk about how engaged commuters are in the community. We need to talk about how involved resident students are. And we also need to talk about how information is getting to these students. We can't be reliant on posters because we're spending $15,000 on them, and it makes no sense. It's not sustainable, and it's not efficient. As a Rockman Commerce student, you know that there's frequency and there's reach involved in marketing, and none of that medium is not effective in any way. So we need to take media and take advertising and take it to the students so that information is at their fingertips, and they decide their opportunities that they want to engage themselves in, the events that they want to go to. It's vital. And during the other speeches, I noticed that we only spent 45 seconds talking about that, what the biggest issue is with commuters and students. And that's not enough time. It deserves more allocated time, and it deserves more of our resources. No worries.
We're going to hear from Rowan, our last candidate, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. You're good. Go.
I'm just going to start going.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Ron. I'm a third year student, been on VUSAC, been on POM. But basically what I want you to think about is my platforms. There's a lot of it, so I'm going to talk quickly. Number one, finances, okay? 58% of Canadian students are graduating university with $20,000 in debt. I think 22% are graduating with over $40,000 in debt. Bottom line, that is a bloody ton of money, okay? Now we look, who's defending the issue of fees? UJC was saying, yeah, we lower fees, we're going to fight for fees. They've increased the fees they charge students by over 15% across the past 3 years when I've been here. That's not good enough. What I want to do is make VUSAC make a commitment. We're not going to raise our fees unfairly unless student income goes up too. VUSAC's not exactly, we're not screwing students already, but we make that commitment so we can go after the other people who are already taking advantage of our students. Number one. Number two, academics. We are ultimately here trying to get jobs so we can pay off that $20,000 debt, that $40,000 debt. What I want to do, I've already hashed out a rough budget, and I can see that VUSAC can afford to create a $2,000 travel and conference fund. We used to have that. I don't know where it went, but I want to bring it back. It's so hard. Students, you know, you see a networking conference in Ottawa, but you can't afford $100 to take the bus to Ottawa. Go to VUSAC, you apply, and they can give you some funding to help you get there to make the networking and the connections you need. Number three is student relevance. There's a survey, I think in 2010, and it was just asking about student involvement, and a scary percentage of students actually said, what's VUSAC? And the survey is about VUSAC. So what I want to create a Vic e-handbook. Okay, we used to have a student handbook. Again, I don't know where it went. It'd be really helpful. I wanted to have a search function, so just put in, I want information on RES, who, Wanda Hughes, email, phone number. What's VUSAC? Contact the VPO, here's how you can get involved, this is what they can do for you. Bottom line, it's nothing flashy, it's nothing crazy, but I want to get stuff done for students.
All right, thanks so much, Rowan. It's question 5. The way we're going to do this way, I'm going to take people who put questions for individual candidates first, and then we'll open the floor to anyone who wants all 3 candidates to answer the question. So do you ever have any questions for a specific candidate? At 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll start off here, and then move on to David.
Thanks.
And sorry,
yeah.
Kenneth, I think we're gonna do 45 seconds. Thanks.
Okay, this is for Alice, because I noticed Nafa and Rowan sort of touched on this briefly. Alice, what, as you know, being sort of president of VUSAC requires sort of intricate knowledge of the budget of the university and sort of money that's allocated to the VUSAC in general. What is your budgetary experience?
I have looked at it before. I know that the budget is, part of it is allocated to, I haven't looked in detail, but definitely I feel that it should, most of it should go towards student scholarships, student experience, and continue to advocate for that.
Thank you.
David?
Is it actually alright if I address 2 candidates? Like specifically 2, because it's basically that, I mean, kind of elephant in the room, but Nanfa and Alice, I mean, you guys are running as first-year students. How do you guys feel that going into such a high position, which is traditionally sort of in the purview of upper years, going into it as first years gives you a different perspective, or why you think you're able to fill that role?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, coming here first year really gave me a fresh look at everything, and I don't feel intimidated by the role at all. I feel that it's actually important for, for us to take risks, and if we can demonstrate the leadership and we know what students are looking for. Right? Personally, I interviewed several dozen students before I came here, so I think if we have those characteristics, then we can be qualified.
Yeah, I agree with Alice, and I think a title is just a title. In essence, the ends justify the means. Like, it's what you accomplish and what you're able to do that will prove how capable and how effective your leadership is. So even as a first year, I'm aware of what students want. I've gone around and I've asked students, and to be honest, 9 out of 10 of them don't know what VUSAC is, and that's a problem. I mean, a lot of you guys are politically engaged, and that's one perspective. But I mean, if you look around you, the room is nearly empty. It's like a third of its capacity. That shows you that you're not the only ones here. There are other people who aren't as politically engaged, who aren't concerned with the things you're concerned with. They prefer going out, getting drunk. Some of them prefer going to talent shows and hearing musicians play. Some of them prefer going to law conventions. So it's just satisfying the needs of the people that's most important, in my opinion.
Thanks.
Okay, all right, I'm going to one-up Kataib here and address a specific question to each of you. These are policy questions in particular in terms of what you have advocated thus far in the Q&A and around campus in general. So firstly, Alice, my general question to you is about exposure and representation, because I noticed that while your two colleagues have been engaged both on social media and around campus, your presence on VIC has been nearly invisible during the campaigning period. How can I trust you as a president to actually be a visible voice for me?
I have been, you mean specifically for you, right? You didn't see my posters.
I haven't seen posters, I haven't seen you on the Q&A at all.
Right, so unfortunately I couldn't get to that, but I have put my poster up online and posted numerous posts on Facebook, as well as sent emails, and actually interviewed more than 100 students, residents. I don't think I talked to you, unfortunately. But yeah, so I think I have done a lot to make people more aware of my presence.
Okay, next question. Sorry, they're written on my smartphone because I prepared this in advance. Okay, Nampa. You have this notion of a Victoria University smartphone app. Now, I have 3 problems with this, and I'd like you to address all 3. One, I think it's the notion of a smartphone app is incredibly elitist, though I do possess one myself. I know that other people don't. No, seriously. And I think it's problematic that the app isn't accessible to all VIC students as a result of that. 2, I also think it's prohibitively expensive to focus on app development, and I wonder how you allocate the VUSAC budget as to do this, insofar as, like, are you willing to raise college fees in order to make this project happen? 2, I understand that there needs to be maintenance and updating on these applications. Are you willing to impose that fee, beyond a year in order to make that happen, et cetera, et cetera? And 3, there's also this notion that this app promotes external events as well. Don't you think it's problematic as a VUSAC president to be promoting events for Victoria College students outside of Victoria College as a result of that?
Well, pertaining to your first question, it's all-inclusive because VIC students, if they don't have smartphones, they have laptops. If they don't have laptops, they have access to the internet. And the way applications work, not necessarily an application or a system, it's accessible online. It has to have a web base before it can operate on a smartphone. So students can log in through their laptops, through an internet cafe computer, or through their smartphones. So it's all-inclusive in that sense. And your second question regarding the fact that it's elitist, so could you...
So you already addressed that. The second question was in regards to how would you budget for this sort of thing?
Well, I mean, there are 2 ways you can make applications. There are native applications, and then there are applications that already have a platform through iOS and Android or whatever the system is. And the fact of the matter is, it's not going to be as much as the photocopying budget, which is $15,000. And that's not eco-sustainable. It would cost between $6,000 and $7,000, and it's just about how we value how interactive and how inclusive the VIC environment is.
Yes.
Students need to be informed.
Sorry, I'm going to cut you off. I'm sorry.
I didn't get to your third question. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'll ask it in a Q&A. All right. Rowan, I understand that a huge portion of what you've been talking about, especially online, has been in regards to the Canadian citizen requirement on the board. My issue with that is a particular focus by which you only target a specific section of students. Do you think that sort of focus detracts from your overall view of how to deal with students in Victoria College?
I don't think so. It's just a specific limitation. I think the big problem is, hypothetically speaking, if Nanfa wins this election, he can't represent students on the board of Regents, which, I could use really choice words to describe what I feel about that potential issue. I think if there's something that is limiting students, essentially it's a xenophobic policy is what it is, and it dates back to nearly the 19th century. And I mean, yes, it may be limiting my view, but it's important that we move out of the 19th, skip the 20th, and get into the 21st century. And it's a little thing, isn't going to take much time. I'll just say, Board of Regents, get your act together, we need to keep on pushing. And I know each board candidate agrees with me. And quick note of information on the photocopier, just because it came up right before this meeting. VUSAC has already got a contract that will lower it by to $1,500 from $15,000 for not this year, but next year.
Great, thanks. We had a question at the back. Ellen, sorry, behind you.
Okay, so just to clarify, this is for Alice. Which clubs have you headed, and have you been involved in VUSAC before?
Previously, no. I have done research and looked at all of the notes, but I'm involved in actually 4 campaigns right now. I hosted a conference as part of an innovation club, and I am running a climate change club, and I'm involved in 2 environmental and sustainability initiatives on campus.
Okay, and for both Nanfa and Alice, since you haven't been involved in VUSAC before, how will you be able to step up and understand like the inner workings, the constitution, the budget, and like running a council meeting, which is a really big and new experience because like it's very different, and the difficulties that arise in meetings, and how will you step up to face that responsibility without the previous knowledge?
Well,
sorry.
Well, then again, like I said, these are prerequisites for a council to run and operate, but they're not necessarily essential. They're not necessarily what we're here for. We're kind of here for student needs, and if we make a collaborative effort with the different committee heads and the VPO, I think we could definitely overlook some of these barriers and impediments and actually tackle the major problem, which is how involved students are. They're Mandarin-speaking kids who can't read these English-written posters. So that means they're barred off from certain events. And it doesn't make sense. These are issues that are way more of an impediment than how good my memorization of the Constitution is, which 90% of VUSAC big students will not read. And that's the fact of the matter. We need to tackle the crux of the issue, which is how is involvement going to take place? How are students going to find out about music recitals from first years? How are they going to find out about talent shows and the ball?
Thank you.
I want to say something. So for about stepping up to the role.
Sorry, you already answered. So
no, I didn't answer.
Oh, you didn't.
No. So I think there are many difficulties with it, but it's not something that can't be done. As long as we have the will and the need to do so, I think doing the necessary research, having the important basic skills such as teamwork skills and leadership skills should be enough. And if you care about the student voice and student population at VIC, then it would be quite a breeze.
Cool. Just to show of hands, how many questions do we have left? We're just running a little bind of time. So I'm going to take a question here.
Questions now?
Sorry? These are questions for all the candidates now. If you have an individual candidate, I encourage you to approach the candidate afterwards. We're just the space is booked by another group very soon. So do we have a question for all 3 candidates to ask? Let's take one from Yelena, and then we'll end up with Zach, and I think we're gonna have to close it after that.
Okay, so just to put this question in perspective, I'm the current VUSAC president. I would highly caution you against saying that this role is something that you're not intimidated by. I'm still intimidated by it on a day-to-day basis, and I've done this for a year. But what I want to know from the first-year candidates first, because it is important that you know everything about not just VUSAC, but about VIC and about the general university structure, function, operations, issues, everything. What are the 3 major recommendations that you would make to Governing Council regarding the UTSU Student Society Summit?
All right, let's go.
So really very, very complex issue, yes. And I don't want to take a stance right now on it. It's especially because the details of which I do not know. I have heard of it before. I want to take a neutral stance right now, get more input from students, and make a formal decision.
I mean, I understand your concern completely that there's a lot of procedural things that we need to understand first before we could take this decision up. But I mean, it's a constitution that you have to read and understand the rules. It's writing and it's about comprehending that, and it's a simple process when you put it into perspective. I mean, having read the Leviathan overnight, to be honest, like a constitution is not much of an obstruction. I can read it and I would memorize and understand all the workings of the government of VUSAC. It's not really that much of an impediment to someone assuming a role. I think what's more important is, understanding what the students want and delivering those needs, opposed to, And regarding the UTSU summit, I'm not too particularly insightful as to what's going on with that, so I wouldn't be able to give you a well-informed response, and I wouldn't want to.
In regards to what students want, I think about 66% of voters in the last Vic election voted clearly in a referendum that they wanted to divert fees from the UTSU. This still hasn't happened, and the reason why this happened is Victoria's students showed they had a clear lack of faith in the way the UTSU was operating. Unfortunately, we've reached no progress. The three main points, I'm not sure I'll hit three because I've only got 30 seconds left, but the main point is I want to let the UTSU know that there's a blank slate. They're brand new people, well, except for Cameron Wavy. They're brand new people. I'm willing to meet them at the table and say we can work this out. Number two, I want it to be stone cold clear. If you're not willing to meet the needs of students, that is clear representation, reformation of voting rules. That way you can't have people just nagging you to vote for them when you're trying to make your benefit in SS. That means you can't write up.
Thanks. All right. Sorry, you're done. Final questions from Zach, and then we'll wrap it up.
First of all, Nanfa, I'd like to congratulate you on having read the Leviathan in one night. That's a fantastic accomplishment. Second thing is that any observer of politics will tell you that arguably the most important role of any executive is the relationship between the organization that they are in charge of and the other organizations that function around them and impact them from an arm's length distance. That being said, it's disappointing how little the summit is being discussed right now, because actually a great deal of progress has been made. So this will lead up to my question, which is that the university has decided that the way to deal with the UTSU is not to let an infinite number of divisions divert their fees away from the UTSU, but rather to define in the governing council's policies what it means to be democratic. And that if you are not fulfilling what it means to be democratic, that the university will exercise its rights to withhold the fees from these different student organizations. Do you view that as a sort of necessary condition for like these democracies to work, or do you see that as the university impinging on our autonomy? And this is for all three of you.
So your question is that is it fair that if a democratic institution is no longer democratic, that it stops receiving money from the people it's not representing anymore?
Yes.
I agree with that.
I think that being part of whatever organization it is, you have obligations that are social. That means they apply to everyone, regardless of how involved you are. It's a similar discussion with commuter fees in terms of VUSAC. But the fact of the matter is UFT accounts for every dollar that it charges us. And to remove that is going to be a difficult discussion entirely, because we're all a part of it, whether or not we like it. And so the fees are applied evenly across every single individual for certain reasons to accomplish certain purposes. So they're communal goods, and these dollars that we're giving in are working towards that purpose. So for one person to kind of pull away from that is kind of unfair to the other groups. And so once it's kind of all for one one for all. That kind of mentality there. So if we're all going to pay, we all have to. So I think a better approach to take is to target how we can enhance our relationship with UTSU and how it can be beneficial.
Alice?
I definitely think that it's important to benefit the students. If students aren't being benefited, if they're not being represented, then we shouldn't give the organization fees. Give them funds. I think because there are many conflicts of interest between UTSU and Victoria University sort of issue, it's important to approach it carefully, tread water carefully, and see exactly, definitely understand all of the terms around it and democratic issues. But whatever definitely benefits students and or even students don't like, I think we should definitely look into that.
Cool. Let's have a round of applause for our candidates. So with that brings our spring election town hall to a close. Thanks for coming out. We had a great turnout. The candidates are more than happy to answer any questions you may have. We seem to clear out the room. And again, any questions that you have can be posted on the Facebook group. Have a good night, guys.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Good job.